Okay, is that okay to start?
It is indeed.
Perfect. Okay, yes, as John has said, I no longer work for the National Library of Scotland, so I'm doing this talk in a personal capacity, but it's really, the talk is, it's going to walk you through a number of maps from the Esk Valley. And to give you an idea how many are online, we have currently, or I'll keep saying we because I worked there for 9 years and I always say we when I say the National Library of Scotland, but it's not we anymore because I don't work there. But we have about 250,000 maps online, and a good portion of those are maps from Scotland. And that number's to go up to about 500,000 in the next few years. So to show you the maps of the Esk Valley as we're going through, I have to kind of explain the website as we're going through to kind of, if you haven't used it before, it's a particularly complicated website. Once you get your head around how it works, it's actually not that complicated, but for first-time users, and I'm guessing that a good few people here have never used the website before, it can be quite complicated. So I'm going to kind of walk you through the website, and on that journey, I'm going to show you some maps of the Esk Valley. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully. So can everybody see the screen now? It's got kind of 4 tabs up the top here.
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect. Okay, so this is the homepage of the National Library's maps website. So it's just maps.nls.uk. You can see that up in the top left-hand corner there. Nice and simple. What I'll do is there's a bunch of blue tabs on the left-hand side where you can get access to most things, and they pretty much are what they say. So if you want to see maps of Scotland, just click on here, or maps of various counties, click on here. I'd say this area is more useful for things like air photo mosaics. They're easier to find in there than elsewhere, military maps, and so on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on these 4 tabs along the top here, plus another couple of things that can be really quite useful. So there's a kind of second batch of tabs here, not really going to focus on them very much today, but I'll maybe click on a couple of these just to give you an understanding of what's in them. And then down the bottom of the screen, it's all the technical stuff. And I'll come on and I'll speak a little bit about that just towards the end of the talk. But I think I'll start with these 4 tabs first, and I'll go to what was always our traditional tab, which was Map Finder with Outlines. And this is basically a set of maps as you would get them in a shop. It's just kind of paper version in the shop. We've got the digital version, and I'll just click on to let you see. So what you see here is a kind of red map. And what that means is these red maps are Great Britain Ordnance Survey maps, any OS 6" to the mile maps from 1840s to 1960s. Now, if I click on this bottom drop-down menu, and bear in mind, if you work out the drop-down menus, you will work out how the website works. It's really that simple. Just use the drop-down menus. It's the easiest way to find things. If I was to click on the 25" to the mile maps, you'll see that red map turns purple. You'll see there are gaps in there, but that's because some areas didn't get 25" to the mile maps, generally rural areas. Or if I was to click on these 1 to 1,250 maps, you'll see it turns kind of green and yellow. So I'm going to jump back to the 25. I'll probably stay on 25" to the mile maps for most of this talk. So if I want to zoom in, I'll quickly zoom in and then I'll zoom back out again, just to show you that these purple maps is actually a series of boxes. You can see there. And when you zoom out, those boxes just turn into a kind of purple blob. So there are various ways to zoom in. You can double click your mouse. You can use the scroller on your mouse if you've got one. You can use these little buttons down in the bottom left-hand corner. Those also zoom in and out. But really the easiest way to do it is to type a modern place name. So I'm going to type first where I live. I lived in at Newbattle, and you'll see it comes up there, right at the top. The problem is if you've got to wait until the list comes up, because if I type in Dalkeith, you'll see that the first Dalkeith that comes up is Perthshire. So if I press return rather than waiting on the list, I would end up in Perthshire rather than Dalkeith that I want down in Midlothian. So just jump back to Newbattle. There we go, and I'll just click on that, and it then takes me into Newbattle. And you can see Newbattle Abbey Crescent, where I am currently, is kind of split into two maps. You can just see the two squares there, the two oblongs that cover Newbattle Abbey Crescent. Now, if I want to see a map from Newbattle Abbey Crescent, I'm just look at. So I can choose any of these maps here for 25 inch to the mile. So there's 1892 map, there's a 1905 map, and there's a 1914 map. I wanted to show you something specifically that was on the 6 inch to the mile map. So I'm going to jump out to 6 inch to the mile, and then I'm going to go on there, and you'll see that there's a slightly more 6 inch to the mile maps than there were 25. So there's one from the 1850s, a couple from the 1850s, one from 1890s, one from 1905, one from 1913, one from 1930, a couple from 1938. So I'm going to click on one of the 1938 ones. And you'll see there, trying to find Newbattle now, actually, I think we're over on the side. Yeah, we're just in a Newbattle here. So here's Newbattle. This is basically the walk down Newbattle Abbey Crescent. So between the King's Park and Kirkbank, this walk here is the central walk down through Newbattle Abbey Crescent. And you can see at this time it is a golf course. It's noted there on the map as a golf course. The great thing about the website that you'll be able to see when you get into it is that you can zoom in really as far as you possibly can go. I mean, it's only starting to pixelate now. So the National Library really isn't trying to hide anything from you. They're trying to give you as much information as possible. And it's all free. So anybody can do this from home. Just going to show you a quick thing to show you one of the big differences between 6 inch to the mile maps and 25 inch to the mile maps. You can see there that the 6 inch to the mile maps are all hatched blocks. If I was to click back onto 25 inch to the mile map, choose a slightly later one. 25 inch to mile maps are actually broken up into individual properties. Whereas, as I said, 6 inch to mile are just hatched blocks. You see that you see individual properties broken up there. So you get more in the 25 inch to mile maps, but for most purposes, 6 inch to the mile maps are absolutely fine. Okay, so that's nice and simple. There's not much extra there. It's just simply a map and nothing else with the map. You can just zoom in. You can choose any area of the country, Scotland, England, Wales, and as long as it's got a map that covers that particular area. As I said, some of the rural areas for 25 inch to mile maps don't have a map. And there are some little idiosyncrasies as well that probably are good to mention for a Midlothian and East Lothian group, is that Edinburgh, Lothians and Fife, and a couple of other places, didn't get a 25 inch to the mile first edition. So basically how the Ordnance Survey created their maps was in the 1850s, they created a first edition 25 inch and a first edition 6 inch. And then in the 1880s, 1890s, they created a second edition for 25 and for the 6. And then they created later editions. But they didn't create a 25 inch to the mile first edition for Edinburgh, the Lothians and Fife. So we're quite badly served in that sense, unfortunately. So I'm going to go home to the home page now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the map finder with marker pin. And what we realized was that people find things geographically. They like to click on things. You know, if I lived in Edinburgh, for example, it's easy to click on Edinburgh. Sorry, it's my mouse isn't working particularly well. But it's easy to click on Edinburgh. So I'll just do that. And then I'm going to jump over. Sorry, it's not working particularly well. I think my signal is not great this evening. I'm going to go over to Roslyn Glen. And what you would normally do with the marker pin is zoom in. As I said, my signal isn't working particularly well this evening, but you can click on any particular area. So I could click on Rosewell and it'll show me the maps for Rosewell. There are 31 large-scale maps for Rosewell. There are 34 for Roslyn Glen Country Park. So you can click in any area of the country. If you click in Edinburgh, you'll get hundreds. If you click on Glasgow, you'll get hundreds. As you go more rural, the number of maps will reduce down. So as I said, I've got Roslyn Glen Country Park there. Trying to zoom in just a little bit. It's not working because my internet's not great. But what you can also do is you can filter it down. So if I've got 34 maps and I only want maps from the 20th century, I can do that and I'm down to 15 maps. And there's every map that covers that Roslyn Glen area that has the Roslyn Glen metadata in it. And that's most of the maps. So I can choose any of these maps. So I'm going to choose this one here. This is a fairly modern map from the 1950s. And you can see, I'm going to come back to this factory later on actually, but it's just to let you see there. There's I think that is the road coming in. I was looking for the Esk there somewhere. I thought the Esk was in there somewhere, but you can see the railway tracks in there. And farms. Okay, so you can click on any area of the country. If I want to go down to Leeds, for example, click on there. There's 314 maps that cover Leeds. Now, some of these are, large ordnance survey sheets that cover half the country, but you can scroll down until you get the type of map you want, or you can reduce it down by date. So if I only wanted 19th century maps of Leeds, I can do that, and it cuts it down to 24. So actually, it's a map of the world there, but you get the idea that you can choose any maps. There's a geological map there I've just clicked on. And you can choose any area of the country, and you can do that for the Esk Valley as well. Okay, so those are the kind of traditional ways that we would find maps, and it's a really great tool, not massively interesting beyond the fact there are a few maps there. So what we tried to do was add in some added value. So we added this georeferenced mapping. So I'm just going to click on that. And you'll see that the coloured maps have now been replaced by what looks like one large map. But actually, when you zoom in, and I'll try and find a good example of this, what you'll see is that there are a series of maps all stitched together. So you can see the stitching there, you can see the 4 maps. And as you move around, down that stitch, we'll come to another one somewhere along the line. There's another join there. So these are 1-inch maps. The smaller the map you go, the more stitches you'll see. So there you go. You can see all the maps that are stitched together there. These are for 1 to 1,250 maps. Okay, so I'm going to choose 25-inch to the mile maps here, and then I'm going to move over to, I'll just type in Dalkeith. And I'm going to go to the meeting of the rivers there. And then what I'm going to do is show you what you can do with this georeferenced map. So we've got the meeting of the rivers there, north and the south Esk. And this little slider on the bottom of the screen, you can just pull this left, and you can see that we've got a modern satellite image there. It's not a particularly impressive image to show you. I'm going to show you a couple of other things to show you just how effective this is. But you can choose the background image there. You can choose any number of things. There's LiDAR in there. There's some other OS maps in there that you can choose and put them as the background. I've just got the Esri World image, so you can see that in the background there. Now, I'm going to come back to the Three Rivers and I'm going to show you something, but firstly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to Edinburgh and just to give you a couple of examples of how effective this tool is. So here we go. We have here Holyrood Palace, and we've got the graveyard here. And down here, you've got the Royal High School cricket ground. And in this area, it's a lot of kind of hospitals and breweries. If I take the slider at this point, if you keep an eye on Holyrood Palace or the graveyard, you'll see that I can click on this little link at the bottom right-hand corner and it tells you the date of the map. So it's the 1890s, so maybe 125 years ago. And if you look at Holyrood Palace or the graveyard, you'll see that in those years, they have barely changed. The one thing I would say about the overlay is that it's not exact. So you'll see Holyrood Palace there is slightly off from it's not bad actually, but you'll see there'll be quite a few cases where you slide it and you think it's a little bit off from the satellite image. But I mean, it's a job that we have to do quickly because there are hundreds and hundreds of maps to go through. So you can see that there's barely any change in regards to Holyrood Palace and in regards to the cemetery there. But if you watch this area just to the left of Holyrood Palace, you'll see that actually there are massive changes there. That's the Scottish Parliament now. There's a lot of changes in that area. But what I always find interesting actually is that the shape of the roads around here, just south of Holyrood Palace, are exactly the same. And you quite often find that the shape of the roads barely changes, and that's in 125 years. And an even better example of that is down in the meadows. And you can see, if you watch the walks through the meadows, you'll see that the walks you're walking through the meadows now are the exact same walks that people were walking through 125 years ago. And actually, it goes back actually to the 1850s as well. So 150, 160 years ago, most of those walks were there in exactly the same place. I'm going to pop back out to Dalkeith again. I'll type it in, I think. And go back out to the meeting of the rivers. And you can see there, the river is nicely coloured in blue for us in these early 25-inch to the mile maps, which means it's incredibly easy to follow. So if we were to follow the North Esk, you can follow it. Here you come past Dalkeith House, into Dalkeith, and you just keep following it along. There's Elgin Hoch. Coming to Lasswade. We're coming through Lasswade now, and you can see various things there. Again, at any point, you can slide that slider. So if you watch this little reservoir, you'll see that that's now gone, its housing. But obviously, the river can just about be made out on the satellite image. And you can just keep following it, and you see it's incredible how much it winds in certain places. I would expect the river just to come straight over here, but there's this huge wind around a place called the Maiden Castle. And again, through Roslin. There's the Roslin Mills. I'm assuming that most of that is now gone. It's all trees. So it's a fantastic tool, and it leads you right out to the to the kind of head of the river. So the map changes at some point. Actually, the Blue River disappears, and they've had to use another map because they've obviously not got that set of maps from that period in time. And the river changes to grey, and it's a little bit more difficult to follow. But you can do it if you've got the patience. You'll see there's another little reservoir there, just in at Dalmore, and it's gone, and there's housing sitting on top of that. There's another little reservoir just above, and a reservoir above that, and I think probably all three of them have gone, because obviously we've got the bigger reservoirs now up at that end. So that is the georeference mapping, and how you can overlay it on top of various different images from this drop-down menu. But there's other things here that you can use as well. So we've got other things we've put in this, what's called Spy Viewer. And I quite like this because it gives you context. You don't have to slide the slider back and forth. You can just move it to the side and you see the context there. So it's quite nice. You can also change the size of the spyglass if you so want. So that's quite a nice tool. We've got this full screen draw, which is quite useful. And if I've got time at the end, I'll show you an example of how this has been used to really good effect. But you can download the National Library of Scotland's maps onto your website. There's an API tool that you can use if you have a website, and if you guys are interested in that, I can show you it. But basically, you click on this, so you can choose a point, choose a color, and then you can add that color to various places on there. You can use a string. Polygons. And circles. And it's just a kind of useful way to highlight things if you do use the maps on your website. So I'm just going to come out of that if I can remember how. And there is also a measure tool. If you're interested, this might be something that's quite interesting to you, to your group. So you can use the ruler there, and you can measure certain things. So it's just a single click all the way around until you get to the end, and then a double click, and it will tell you gives you an area there. I think there's also a ruler in here somewhere, so you can measure how long certain things were. Oops. I think there might be the ruler one at the bottom. So it's got distance as well. So that's the georeference tool, and within that there's a lot of additional tools that you can use. There is one additional tool in here that's really quite handy. Now, what you've got on the top here is a modern gazetteer. So that's taken from a modern gazetteer. I'm not quite sure exactly where, but it's a modern gazetteer, and you can type in any modern name and bring up that place. So the vast majority of places we know will come up. However, if I was to type in Ancram Cottage in Dalkeith, there's nothing comes up for that because it's not on the modern gazetteer. However, what we've done is we've created this historic gazetteer, which dates from 1888 to 1913. And you can go in here and type in Ancram Cottage. And there we go. It jumps to Ancram Cottage. And how we were able to do that is we went out to the general public and asked them to come along to a georeference 6-inch to the mile map and type in the names of everything. I did the whole of Dalkeith and Newbattle because I live here and I come from here. So I would come in, I would click on Ancram Cottage, I would type it in, and somebody would come in after me to make sure the spelling was okay, and it then goes into the database. So that database now is in this historic viewer. There is a website attached to this, which I'm going to show you at the end, because I think for you guys it will be really useful as well. Okay, so the one other thing I'm going to search for in here, because it's not in the modern gazetteer, but the Roslin Carpet Manufactory. And then I'm going to flip over to side-by-side viewer. So you see there's the Roslin, a 6-inch to the mile map of Roslin Carpet Manufactory from sometime between 1888 and 1913. And on the right-hand side here, you've got a modern satellite image. And again, you can change the images in the background. So you can put in a world topographical map, Bing road map, LiDAR maps, which sometimes I've got to pick the right one with this, but it's just taking a little bit longer to come up. But there's a LiDAR in there somewhere. I'm not an expert in LiDAR actually, but I'm sure people in this group are. So you can see. So that's the side-by-side mapping. And again, you can, as I said, you can put a series of different maps in on the left-hand side here. For some reason, I jumped back to Dalkeith. I thought it was in Roslin, but that's okay. And you can see, you can compare and contrast the maps there. The other one that's actually, I can't find it. I got to go to Great Britain to get the other sets of maps. So I'm going to go to the 1 to 1,250, and you can see on the left-hand side there, you've got a map from kind of the turn of the century, and on the right-hand side, you've got a map from the middle of the 20th century. So you really, there's cursors on both sides, so you can see, you can just run your cursor down one side and see what's in exactly the same place on the other side. So you see there's housing there on the right-hand side, it's fields and so on the left-hand side, and the infectious disease. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the beginning now, and I'm just going to show you another quick couple of maps that might be of interest to you. So firstly, there's the Roy's Military Survey. So Roy's Military Survey was it was created just in the aftermath of the Jacobite uprising, and William Roy was sent up to Scotland to kind of map the roads in Scotland, because one of the real problems they'd had during the uprising was that they weren't able to find their way through the country, the government forces. So it's a really nice tool. I think that might be Haddington. Let's move further west. So there we go. We're right along the coast, and we're at Musselburgh. So you can see again, you're able to chart the river through this map, and it's nicely coloured and in blue. And whilst there's not a great deal of detail when you get into the towns, there is, in terms of, it shows you the individual fields, and it gives you a rough idea of how big the towns are. And there we're back there at the meeting of the rivers. Okay, so that's the first one I want to show you. And the second one was these town plans and views. So just going to show you, I'm just going to go to the graphic index. So everywhere that's got a brown dot has got a town plan. So we'll come to somewhere in Mid or East Lothian. Let's go to Roslin. I didn't actually know Roslin had one, but it's not what I thought it was. So it's the OS town plans. Sorry, I can't find what I'm looking for. Actually, I'm looking for the town plans of Dalkeith, but I can't actually find them. So apologies for that. Yeah, apologies for that. I can't find the town plans, but there are a set of town plans that you can go in and have a look at from about the 1850s, and they're very, very detailed. I think they're 1 to 500s. That's how complicated the site is. I've worked at National Library of Scotland for 9 years, and I'm struggling to find certain things. So just go back to the home page there. And there's a couple of things down here that I'd like to show you. First is the Frederick Douglass viewer. Now, I said I was going to show you a map and that's been put onto a website, and they've used the dots. Well, this is the example of that. So you can see there's Frederick Douglass's visit to Edinburgh, and basically the University of Edinburgh and the National Library of Scotland created this map and put these dots on, and basically these lead to various bits of information about his journey to Edinburgh. And this one here is just the George Street Assembly Rooms, which is obviously still there. There's another section on Frederick Douglass in Scotland and black abolitionists in Edinburgh. But it's really just an example of showing you how the dots can be used quite effectively on a website if you want to mark things out. Okay. The next thing I'm going to show you is this site called GB 1900. Can everybody see that? Can everybody see the green map?
Yeah, I can see it.
Oh, perfect. I showed you earlier on the example of Roslin carpet manufactory, and it wasn't in the modern gazetteer. So that's the modern gazetteer. This is where the historic gazetteer came from. This was the project to create that historic gazetteer. So I'm just going to type in Roslin carpet manufactory, and it will zoom in. And what was once a green blob is now a series of dots. So I'm kind of and you can kind of grasp the scale of how big a project it was when you see how many dots are on this, and this is for the whole country, Scotland, England, and Wales. And again, this was the project, as I said, somebody's come in here, they've typed in Roslin carpet manufacturing and Beach Bank and Harper's Hall, and a lot of these places will now be gone. The place names will now be gone, but you can find them in this historic search here. The other great thing you can do on this part of the website is you can search for, so for example, if I wanted to find curling ponds, I could type in curling and find every example of a curling pond that's listed on the map. I'm not going to do it because it takes 5 minutes or so to do it, but they have set up some examples. So there's somebody set up one for quarries and collieries. So quarries are red, collieries are blue. And you can see there, as we zoom in, most of the quarries don't have names as such. They're just generally called Old Quarry. But there's Morriswood Colliery. Disused Colliery. Eastfield Colliery. So you can get the idea. We had a researcher from the University of Oxford, I think it was, or Cambridge, and she was searching a particular name, and she had searched on this place name for, I think, 5 or 10 years, and she had found about 500 place names. And we showed her this tool, and within a couple of days she came back and said she had found an additional 10 or 15 places that she was unaware of. So it's a really, really powerful tool if you're looking for place names. And there's other examples in there of paths and public buildings. The same thing has been set up. I'm just going to try and go back now. The same thing has been set up for Roy's military map. So you can search in here for names on the Roy's military map. So that, again, you can search names that were there in the 1750s, but perhaps are no longer there. And you can search in the modern name as well. So if I was looking for the old name of Dalkeith, it will tell me that. So again, really, really powerful tool. The one thing I've kind of forgot to show you actually, when I was on Map Finder, I'm just going to pick a random map here, 6 inches to the mile from Lithgow. But if I want to find out information about this map, I just go up to this little breadcrumb here and I can click on it. And so if I wanted to find out what the abbreviations were on the map, I can do that. So one of the most common ones is PH. So I can just scroll down to PH and it's public house. And there's a lot of those. There's symbols as well. So it gives you an idea of some of the things that are on the map. So it'll tell you that this on the map would be deciduous trees, fir plantations, mixed wood, and so on. And it also kind of tells you how things are broken up. So how the counties are divided and how the parishes are divided and so on. These lists are not exhaustive by any means. And the National Library is absolutely fantastic at answering questions. If you have a question about symbols or abbreviations or really anything on maps that you can't find on the website, just send them a quick email and they're very good at getting back. I think that might be it. Oh, there was a couple of things actually. One was copyright and reuse of images, which is always a question that comes up after the talk, so I might as well answer it just now. We allow the use of most of the images on the MAPS website for both commercial and non-commercial purposes. So I'm going to take you back in and show you an example. Actually, it's probably a better way to show you. So again, I'll pick any random map. So you'll see that this map, if for some bizarre reason you wanted to buy this map that has virtually nothing on it, if you wanted to buy that, all you have to, if you want to use that in a project, on a website, in a book, all you have to do is check up in this top right-hand corner here. And if it says CC by NLS, that means you can use it. And there's no permission charge for using that map. Now, if I was to click on the CC by, it also gives you the other examples that you'll find on the website. So there's CC by BL, which is the British Library, CCS, Charles Close Society, and so on. If you come up with something other than NLS, you kind of have to follow the rules here, which basically in most cases, I think, point you towards that organisation and just says, just ask them. I think most of them are pretty good about it. The British Library, I think, is pretty good about using their maps. I think it's the Roy's Military Map is the British Library map, and they're pretty good about it. And I think most of the other places would be as well. So, yeah, you just get in touch with them, and they'll let you know what to do. In terms of buying maps, you can, if you see this order this map sign in the top right-hand corner, that means you can order the map. And in most cases, you can order the map. There's a few cases you can't. The Roy's Military Survey, for example, I don't think you can order. But there's a few examples, but most you can. And it's nice and simple. You just come into this page, it'll bring the map up that you clicked on, and all you do is click on what you want. So the prints are full colour, slightly thicker paper. The black and white ones are just photocopies, still good quality. And then there's JPEG digital images, and you can also get TIFFs as digital images as well, but I would say that for most purposes, JPEGs are absolutely fine. And then once you've chosen something, you just update the totals, and it'll tell you the price there is £15, and then there's no postage on the digital images. Another complaint we get at I used to get when I was at the National Library was a lot of people don't want to use PayPal. There is a way around it. PayPal have a tendency to kind of point you towards it and make it look as if you can't use anything else apart from PayPal. But all you do is log in as a guest and you'll get past PayPal. You won't have to use it if you don't want to. There is a wealth of information sitting behind the maps. I'm not even going to try and find it, but if you're looking for something about the website that you want information about, you will find it on there's so much information on here to tell you. But if you can't find it, just email the maps reading room. I think it's maps@nls.uk, and they will answer your question. They're absolutely fantastic. They really are, and I think they legally have to get back within 10 days. Generally, they'll get back within a day or two and give you a full answer. Okay. So the other thing, I do this all the time. The website's so big that I kind of forget things, and I just remember that the historic API, which I mentioned to you earlier on, is in here. And this is the map you can buy for your website. In fact, this one's free. So you can put this onto your website, just a little bit of coding if somebody's got that ability, and you can insert that onto your website. And there are a series of other maps that you can use as well. They used to charge for these. I'm not sure if they still do, so you would probably be best to ask. But you can see that these are more historic maps. So there's some really nice maps in there you can use on your website. And the other thing that I was just thinking about there that maybe doesn't really relate to the Esk Valley or even to Scotland, but it's really, really heavily used, are the military maps. So there's the First World War trench maps actually are incredibly well used. If you're interested in the First World War, you can go in and kind of click on any of these and you'll get a series of maps up. So for this particular area that I clicked on here, there's quite a number of maps, but because it's in the SOM actually. So you can click on any of these, and First World War maps vary considerably from ones that are not particularly exciting at all to ones that are absolutely fantastic and list all the names of the trenches from Princes Street to Sauchiehall Street to Rats Alley. So it's a really, really useful tool, their First World War maps. Okay, but until you dig in, you're never really going to know what you're going to find. Okay, so I think that's around about 45 minutes now. So I think I'm going to stop sharing, but I'm honestly, I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. Happy to sit here for as long as you need me to.
Great, thank you very much indeed. It's just an amazing wealth of information in all of those maps. You just said that you're happy to answer any questions or get any
Absolutely.
comments. Does anybody want to ask? You're all muted at the moment, so you would need to unmute yourselves. Any comments, questions? Simple question from me. What is LiDAR?
I think I'm sure somebody in this group will be able to give a better answer than me. And I get asked this every time, and I keep meaning to research it but I think it's a kind of survey of the ground, and so I think a lot of archaeologists use it to find sites that they can kind of survey. I'm really not an expert in LiDAR, but it's interesting if you can get in and find a good LiDAR map, and there are a few on the website. It's worthwhile going in and having a look.
Okay.
You can also see old buildings on it that are now gone, that might not even be on the maps. There'll still be the traces of them on the LiDAR.
Yeah. And the marker pin thing, presumably that just uses a grid reference to identify a point that all maps can then be related to. Is that the way it works?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure. I think they use grid references to mark out some things. In other cases, they use metadata. So there are people go through and they extract metadata from the maps. They have to do it manually. It's quite a slow process. So they'll take out the detail of the map, the name of the map. So every map's got a number in Roman numerals. They'll extract all that information manually. They have tried to create a computer program to do it, but the map, where the information is, varies from map to map, so it can be quite complicated. So it's still done manually. I think that's the main way of doing it, but I think they do use grid references as well. I didn't deal with the technical side of the website, so I'm not 100% sure. If you get a chance to get Chris Fleet to come along and talk to you about the Maps website, he really is an expert.
Right, right. Anyone else?